Namaste, Jai Hind. Welcome to another edition of ANI Podcast with Smita Prakash. We are recording and broadcasting this episode on the week of Vijay Divas. We've also just recently heard of Chinese aggression on our border. We are honored today to have amidst us General Manoj Mukund Naravane. In this podcast, I'm also joined by my colleague, Defence Editor Ajit Dubey. General Manoj Mukund Naravane served as the 27th Chief of the Army Staff till April 2022. He took over from General Bipin Rawat. General Naravane's tenure was an action-filled one, especially the Chinese aggression of 2000. General Naravane's contribution in pushing back the enemy will make it to history books someday. But as you will see in the podcast, the mild-mannered general will never speak much about his own role in India's counter-move that resulted in India's troops regaining advantage on the border. However, General Naravane took us back to that period when we were attacked along the line of actual control. What happened then? What were the lessons learned? How it has probably impacted in our reaction to China's aggression in 2022. General Naravane, we are so honored that you're here with us. Ajit and I have had the good fortune of attending your press briefings, have met you in your office when you were Chief of Army Staff. When a Chief of Army Staff superannuates, the establishment, whether it is the political establishment or the services, they get to say thank you. But civilians don't get to say thank you to you, sir. So thank you for your services. And on behalf of all our viewers, all our listeners, we are most grateful for what you have done for our country.
Thank you, Smita and Ajit, for having me here today. And I'm grateful for your thanks. But the thanks are not actually due to me, but to the entire Indian Army, who is actually in the service of the nation.
So that's again typical of you to say this.
No, that's the fact actually.
Right. So for our viewers and our listeners, we are running this program a day before Vijay Divas, and also we are running this program a day after it has come to the attention of all of us that there has been a Chinese aggression in Arunachal Pradesh. And as we are recording this program, Raksha Mantri is speaking or going to speak soon in Parliament. The three service chiefs have briefed the Raksha Mantri, Mr. Rajnath Singh, and he is going to be speaking in Parliament. So in the middle of the show, we will probably interrupt and get General Saab's views on this. General Naravane, when China tried to alter the status of the line of actual control, this was in May 2020. At that time, you were the army chief. Tell us what happened then and the subsequent months, because the tension continued, the aggression continued for several months. And what was the situation then and how did you deal with it?
Well, you see, China has been trying to alter the status quo along the LAC for many years and decades, in fact. Mm-hmm. And they have been doing this in very small incremental steps, which by themselves do not look very dangerous. They actually look quite innocuous. What we call salami slicing, coming up 1 inch at a time. But in the bargain, over a period of time, they have gained a lot. And this is the tactics that they have adopted and were continuing to do. But there was a time to say this much and no further. So that is what actually happened as they kept trying to probe, especially north of the Pangangso, when they were trying to probe and come closer and closer in these areas of differing perception. They come time and again, and then they try to make that the historical fact. That we've always been coming here. So they try to alter the status quo as it is existing.
When you say come, what does that mean? When they come and they don't leave, you mean? They stay?
Sometimes that is what we contest. That is precisely what happens in these areas where we have different perceptions. We also patrol up to our perception line. They come up to their perception line. But while this is happening, if the patrols come face to face at the same time, then obviously there is a chance of a skirmish or a clash happening.
So what happened in 2020? Did we not have the intel that they have come and they're not leaving?
No, it's not that they came and were not leaving. They were continuously patrolling up to where they thought that they should be coming, but they were not allowing us to go where we ought to go. Therefore, we had to be more assertive and push them back. And that is where the clashes occurred, whether it is on north bank of Pengangso or whether it is in PP15, where of course those unfortunate casualties took place.
The PP15 means the Galwan Valley.
The Galwan Valley, that's right.
So what happened in Galwan, sir?
As I said, we have been always patrolling up to PP15, but they were trying to stop us from going to a traditional patrolling point. And that was totally unacceptable to us. And to stop us from coming, they had established a small outpost, you can say, just 2 tents. And we objected very vehemently to that. But
This was in May 2020.
It was ongoing.
Ongoing,
It was going on. So we objected vehemently to that, but they were adamant that they would not go back. And therefore we had to be more assertive, and that is when they also came with additional strength, and the entire clash happened in that area of short of, means on our side of PP15, but as a result we were able to make sure that they go back.
So when you say we were assertive, we were vehement, what does that translate to actually?
Yeah, so you see, over the years there have been many protocols which have been laid down, whether it is on Border Peace and Tranquility Agreement, the BPTA, or Protocol on Confidence Building Measures. So in all of them, there are various provisions to make sure that such clashes do not occur. For example, if 2 patrols come to face, they have to stop wherever we first see each other. And then only the leaders come up along with one buddy and negotiate at that point, and then they go back. You're not supposed to come close together. The strength of the patrols have been laid down. So that obviously if both sides are of equal strength, the chances of a clash are less. But if one side is 500 and the other side is 15, then obviously the side which is 500 feels emboldened. So over a period of time, they were violating one by one all the provisions of those agreements. So at some point, we had also to counter them. If they were violating, then obviously we had to take countermeasures. That is what I mean by we were more assertive and not taking things lying down.
See, as per the timeline which we have, I mean, there are various timelines to this because nobody is quite sure. But in May, China transgresses in 2020. In August, India accuses China of provoking, and then subsequently several transgressions happen. And as you said, we protest, we object. Then India accuses China of provoking military tensions twice in August. China denies, blames India for standoff. In September, China accuses India of firing shots at its troops. And then exchange of fire, first time in 45 years, happened. Now, you're the army chief at that time. What was going on in your mind? Because were you then at that time, because you've said several times that you have to be prepared for war. As an army chief, you have to prepare your troops for war. So were you prepared for war at that stage with China?
See, the transgressions are not actually localized to only Eastern Ladakh. We have areas of different perceptions right from Eastern Ladakh to Arunachal. And these transgressions are happening from time to time in various places. In Eastern Ladakh, in the central sector, Barahoti, in Sikkim, in Arunachal. So this is something that we are always prepared to counter. But as I said, the various agreements which are in place categorically rule out the use of force or resorting to firing. But you cannot only observe one paragraph of the agreement and violate all others. So if you have violated all the others, then I am free to fire. So you cannot accuse me of firing when you have done all the violations. Does that mean you will come with 5,000 people and I will just keep sitting? Obviously I will fire. And that is what they were scared of. And that is the moment we opened fire, they realized that they made a mistake, and this whole gamut of this border agreement has gone to a different level altogether. And that is what imposed caution on them. For the first time ever, they were cautious that this tactics or this strategy of theirs of trying to overwhelm by superior force will not work in the face of
India retaliating.
India retaliating or opening fire.
Right. For the benefit of our listeners and viewers, one second, Ajit, I'm just going to come to you. I'll just, because there are many instances when we talk about it, but, as journalists, you and I might understand. But if there is a student, for example, or somebody sitting outside of India who may not be aware of the complexity of this, just a small explainer. If you don't understand the boundary engagement that India has with China, there's just a small explainer that in 1993 an agreement was signed where between India and China, that neither side will use or threaten to use force against each other by any means. No activities of either side shall overstep the line of control. And in case personnel of one side cross the line of actual control, remember it's line of actual control, LAC, as opposed to LOC, which is on our western front. Now, on LAC, in case the personnel of one side actually cross, as General Saab was explaining, then, like for example, if China crosses or somebody from China crosses, then the Indian side shall warn them, caution them, and say that you have crossed. So once that caution happens, but more relevant part about this agreement is that neither side shall open fire or hunt with guns and explosives within 2 kilometers from the line of actual control. Now, the line of actual control is also kind of not defined in many places, so that's where all the trouble also occurs. So it brings me to the initial question I had, General Saab, that there was this agreement and then there was this aggression and they were pushing us. This was, now you are the army chief.
So
what happens then?
This was precisely the agreement I was referring to,
Sir.
the 1993 one, where it specifically mentioned that there will be no unilateral change of the status quo. You will not come with weapons, you will not come with arms. But if you are now coming with clubs studded with barbed wire, what does that mean? You violated the agreement.
It was the first time that this club with wires happened?
So they have been doing that
They've been doing
earlier. So as I said, they have been continuously violating the agreement.
Okay.
Now if you have violated half the agreement, that doesn't mean that we will not, we'll just keep listening and चुपचाप तो नहीं बैठे रहेंगे. हमने भी कुछ
जी.
करना है और करेंगे. और वही किया हमने.
The nature of the enemy has been similar, persistent, or was it altering we saw in the 2000s?
No, they have, their long-term strategy has always been the same, to keep inching forward and keep probing us for any possible weakness. And if there is a weakness, then come and sit there and then always say that this is how it always was. So therefore, every small probing action has to be contested.
In that
light.
Ajit, you had a question.
Sir, you said that the Chinese were violating the agreement by bringing in large number of troops, armed and all. So this prior to May 2020 aggression which they did and the story came out, how big were the numbers? How did they manage to bring in so many troops so close to our border? We have heard there was an exercise, they diverted troops from there. But how did we know that this is happening?
No, see, whenever patrolling is going on, we always come to know that the patrols are there and are coming. We just mentioned about Yangtze at the beginning of the talk. So when they're assembling, we do come to know that they're assembling. So it's not that you're taken entirely by surprise. But the fact is that we don't expect them to violate an agreement. So it is an agreement that is being violated time and again. So that is the point to note, that if you are violating the agreement, then we reserve the right to take any action that we deem fit.
So this agreement was signed, decades ago. But how do you, as an army chief, tell your men to defend a hot border with no weapons? How are you going to instill in your men and women now that confidence to, there's a hot border, you have an enemy which is coming at you. How do you defend it?
So I will like to clarify, when you say no weapons, we carry weapons. It is not that weapons are not carried. But that is where our men have to exercise great restraint, that in the face of provocation, not to fire, because we are, as gentlemen, following the agreement. But when the enemy or when the PLA was violating these agreements, then we also told them that if they are violating, then you are free to take whatever actions you want to take in your self-defense.
What is the weapon that you that is carried, if I may ask, and where is it carried? Is it carried on the body of the soldier who's there,
Yes,
or
yeah.
is
When
it
you go for a patrol, you go totally armed and expecting the worst. It
and a
is-
firearm?
Yes, a firearm. You carry your rifles, you carry your light machine guns, you carry your ammunition. You are ready to meet any eventuality. It's not that you'd go patrolling with just dandas in your hand. Not that. So
Okay.
there was somewhere it came that the Indian troops were unarmed. I'm sorry, that is not a correct statement which came or report which came at that point. Every patrol which goes ready to meet any eventuality. They're armed as per the laid down scales and as per the patrol that they're going for, and they were equipped also accordingly. If their patrol has to cross some water obstacle, they will be carrying their expedients to cross that water obstacle, or that river or nala. They just don't go as if they're going for a picnic.
Right. So it's a little hard for us to understand that that an Indian soldier is carrying a weapon. He sees his unit chief being killed and doesn't use his weapon. That is why there was this outrage that how, why.
Yeah, so although we did not fire, we also resorted in a similar vein. So you see that it was always a question of who will open fire first. So since we felt that we had the measure of the PLA troops over there, we also countered them in the same way that they were sort of taking action against us, which was basically by the use of non-lethal, that means not actually firing, although casualties did occur by other thing that, so if they were carrying sticks, then we were also carrying sticks.
And sir, we have, after the first instance where they used the barbed wire clubs and all these things, we have also now started using the such sticks with spikes and all.
See, we would still like to maintain that we are a 21st century army. To start going back to clubs and barbed wires is going back to prehistoric times. I think it is a very regressive way of going. We would
Because-
still like to maintain that we, in warfare also there are certain rules. It is not that you just do whatever that you want to do.
Right.
So we would still like to maintain a professional stance, and therefore rather than resort to wielding clubs, we'll rather open fire. That is how our army fights,
Correct.
by using the weapons at their disposal and not getting into fisticuffs.
Is there any other parallel in the world where two armies or two neighbors have decided that we will use these clubs and monkey, what is it called? Monkey web, something it is called.
So that is precisely what
Yeah.
I'm saying. Are we hooligans? Are we mafia? Or are we a professional army? Is that the level that PLA has gone down to?
Yeah.
Hooliganism and street fighting? Or are they a professional 21st century army? On one side, they try to show their technological prowess. On the other side, they're coming with barbed wire clubs. It is ridiculous.
So, sir,
हमने भी तो
did you laugh at them when they were wielding mace and
Yes,
those
yes,
bhalas?
of course, it is so regressive. There's no other word for it.
Yeah. But, Jain Sahab, 15 June 2020, you get information, or at least we got information, that Colonel Santosh Babu and his men died in action. You might have got it a couple of hours before we did. What went through your mind at that stage?
See, any casualty, of course, hurts you. You're as the chief, and not only as the chief, as a battalion commander, as a brigade commander. Every man is your man. He is your son or daughter. So any such information or news that comes, obviously you feel a little saddened by this kind. But on the other hand, you also feel that yes, what they have done is in the line of duty, and they have certainly given as good as they got. And that is actually the fact, whether the PLA admits it or not, or whether the Chinese admit it or not. They also gave it back to the enemy. And of course, in any such clash or battle or war, casualties will happen on either side. That's part of the game, if I can say so.
So, but there was also that situation where we had to literally force them to give back the bodies, and we had to give from our side we had to give. What happens there in that situation at that stage? Is there a negotiation which happens that return the bodies of our men who have died, and then we have to give? How does that happen there, sir?
Of course, once the clash has happened and temperatures have cooled down, both literally and in actual fact, then the saner counsel, of course, prevails. The clash is always in the heat of the moment. And later on, when flag meetings were held...
Between DGMOs?
No, between and on the ground.
On the ground.
On the ground, flag meetings were held. We, of course, facilitated the flag meeting through our official channels, including the diplomatic channels. And on ground, the flag meetings were held at the place where the clashes occurred. And that is where then our men came back, were returned to us.
So we will interrupt with what the defense minister said. So his speech in Lok Sabha is just running, and some of the pointers are that on December 9th in Yangtze area of Tawang sector, PLA troops encroached upon and attempted to change the status quo. The attempt by PLA to encroachment was tackled by our troops in a determined manner. Our troops bravely stopped the PLA from encroaching upon our territory and forced them to go back to their post. The defense minister said in Lok Sabha that the matter has also been taken up with China through diplomatic channels. As you were mentioning, General Saab, that this happened earlier too. Raksha Mantri then said that he would assure the House that our forces are committed to guard our borders and ready to thwart any attempt that will be made to challenge it. In the face of, few soldiers on both sides suffered injuries. Raksha Mantri said that he'd like to tell the House that none of our soldiers died or suffered any serious injury. Due to the timely intervention of Indian military commanders, PLA soldiers have retreated to their own locations. Flag meeting was held with the Chinese counterpart, and the Raksha Mantri said that the Chinese side was refused all actions and told to maintain peace at the border. It's I don't
maybe
know
has refused.
Okay.
Or maybe they're not accepting that they've done it.
Okay.
Maybe trying to imply that.
Right. So, Jain Sahab, this what we have heard through sources is that I think Ajit also will say this, that it's happened before. I mean earlier this year. This is 2022. It's happened on a couple of occasions where the Chinese side has tried to come in. This was probably a larger incident which has come to light. Could you tell us whether it is similar to what happened in 2020?
Similar in Yangtze?
In Yangtze?
Yeah, yes, it is. In fact, Yangtze is one area where the Chinese keep trying to come over across the river into the Yangtze sector. And this is not only of 2020, they try to come every year. And every year they make 2-3 such attempts to come, and they're rebuffed every time.
Okay.
Of course, from their side also, they must be having some pressure from their senior commanders that how is it that you come back every time? Aur kuch karo. Press on more. Kuch karke dikhao.
Kuch karke dikhao would mean that
either crossover
casualties or get more land. Is that because it's a country which is hungry for land all the time. Even though they're such a large country, they're greedy to capture
land. Yes.
Yeah.
So that is why their commanders would be pressing their people also that at least go up to our stated claim line, but we do not allow them to come even up to there. And they have to cross a river to come to our side, and that is where we block them. and we are on a tactically advantageous position. So it's well nigh impossible for them to come. But yet year after year they keep attempting the same thing, and year after year they suffer injuries and go back. Of course, in the bargain we also suffer some injuries, but they have always been at the receiving end. And they make 2-3 such attempts every year, and the last one is normally before the onset of winters. So, and before the snows come, and then all such tactical actions would thereafter not be possible. So we expect this every year, and we were very well prepared to thwart it.
It used to
I'm
happen
sure.
in the western sector too, in Siachen, till an operation happened and they were evicted out and they learnt their lesson and said, "Ab nahi," because we didn't move out from there. What is it similar in what happened in Siachen and what's happening in Galwan and what's happening in Yangtze area?
I think to an extent, because of the stand we have taken, and because we have now made it very clear that this unilateral changes will not be tolerated by us. So by and by, I think it will dawn on them that there is no point in escalating the situation all the time. And it would be better to move towards a permanent solution to this border problem rather than keep this friction alive. And as our foreign minister has said, as long as the border question is resolved, it cannot be business as usual.
Right.
So I think over a period of time, this realization will dawn on them that it is better to have a stable and peaceful border rather than continuing to have such small incidents every now and then, which is, it becomes a setback to our overall relations. So I
Do you think it's dawning? I mean, you've attended several meetings with them. Do you think that they are receptive? It's an army which is receptive to change, or it's not?
I would not say the army receptive to change. It has to be the political establishment which has to be receptive to change and should realize that if they really want peace and tranquility in the region, if they want China and India to re-emerge as the geopolitical and the economic hub that we were in the 18th century. In the 18th century, it was China and India which contributed 80% of the world's GDP. So if we want to regain that position in the future, then it would be better if China and India are friends rather than having this competition and confrontation every now and then.
Sir, I would like to take you back to the Galwan issue. You said the Chinese had put up tents and we opposed that vehemently. And so during Galwan, when we took action, those tents have been now pushed back.
Yes.
And we did it successfully. The team led by Colonel Santosh Babu and his men, they pushed back the Chinese from that position where they had pitched their tents.
It was not so clear cut as it seems now. So there was a period when they tried to push them back. They were still there. And then as a result of the talks which happened thereafter, 10-15 rounds of talks took place. And then in every round of talks, we agreed to disengage from where we were. And as a result of that disengagement, now the status quo has been restored.
In all the locations, sir?
In all the locations, yeah.
So, and can we say that the status quo which the Chinese wanted to change unilaterally post 2020, from May 2020, we have gone back to the older positions after the several round of talks which we have had.
That's right. So post the several rounds of talks, the status quo as of April 2020 has been restored.
Okay.
Jalsab, I'm going to pick a quote of yours. In an interview, you had said, army people are the last people who want to go to war. It's always better to have the whole nation approach and have a good relationship with your neighbors, a stable relationship with all your neighbors, because if you have stable relations, the country prospers, and that should be the aim. That should be done at a political level, diplomatic level, but you need the army. If you want to ensure peace, be prepared for war. I'll take you back to that situation when you became chief and when this thing happened, when this action happened. How do you prepare for war when the other side has already attacked you, has already come? Were you prepared for war? Was the Indian army prepared to go to war with China?
No, as a country, as a nation, and as an army, we are always prepared for war. It is not that we are not prepared at any point of time. Appreciation of likely threats is a continuous process. And intelligence inputs are always there of who's mobilizing, how they're mobilizing. So the kind of mobilization which had happened on the Chinese side was not indicative of a war. It was a mobilization for these small probing actions here and there.
Oh, that's very significant what you're saying.
For a country to go to war, there are many more indications which would be there at the diplomatic level, at the economic level. So,
such as, sir?
You will stock up on your oil reserves, you will stock up on your food to cater for any disruptions to that supply lines. So these kind of indications will start coming from 6 months in advance, 8 months in advance.
Okay.
Wars don't happen overnight.
Right, sir.
That today you're sitting quietly like this and at midnight today you're at war. It's not that way. See Russia and Ukraine. The mobilization happened. People kept saying that war will be there, war will not be there. There were parlays going on, track 2 discussions were going on. But after when everything failed, that is when Russia decided to attack. It's not that 24th February, one fine day they went off.
Yeah.
But we knew that something is happening. Well in
but on
advance.
China, is there intel available? That's what it is.
Oh
It's
yes, we should not discount our forces, our other agencies. We have very good intel. We know what is happening, and in a era of technology with satellites and all, we very well know each and every move of this. And as I said, in the whole of nation approach, it is not the army alone. All the organs of the state, our RNAW is doing a wonderful job. We know exactly what is happening. So let's not be under this delusion that one fine day we are going to get surprised and be at war. We will get adequate notice. We will get adequate notice to mobilize. We will get adequate notice to go and occupy our defenses and be prepared in all respects. I can say that with utmost confidence to the entire nation that we will always be ready to face whatever is thrown at us.
So in 2020, one question, Ajit, then you go. In 2020, there was a lot of, there were these propaganda videos which came out from China, if you remember, that, these trucks going with thousands of people being mobilized. Of course, there were takedowns by the Indian side which said ki ye fake videos hai, ye pehle ke videos hai. And then there were these that, all those trucks which were moving, they had mobile toilets with them, whereas our forces don't have it. So there was, like a lot of propaganda war which happens during these kind of situations. Is India equipped to handle that kind of propaganda war which comes in?
For that, actually, again, I would say at the military level, we are very much capable of handling it because we know what is what. On ground, we know. We can see them. We know what their physical standards are. In fact, at the height of the crisis in eastern Ladakh, their troops who were in that forward line had to be relieved every 48 hours.
And ours are relieved after?
Once you go, you sit there.
So that means 1 year.
Means till
deployment.
you next you go on leave or something. So if you have gone up, you will sit there for 3-4 months, whatever is the thing. That is the hardiness of our troops. Their troops had to be relieved every 48 hours. 10 people would come up, 10 people would go down. That was their staying power. Okay. Our staying power was much more. As I said, when our troops are very fine people, they're resolute, they're hardy, they come from a very good background and stock. They have that nationalistic fervor and they will do whatever is required.
Did it get impacted, sir, with what happened with Santosh Babu? Did that shake the troops' morale?
No, I don't think. In fact, the Indian Army specifically, since we have been involved in active operations for a long time, especially in J&K and in the Northeast, we have been suffering casualties. So it does, every casualty, as I said, hurts. But that casualty, we take it in our stride. We know that while doing our job, something like this is going to happen. In J&K also, when an ID blast takes place, you do lose 15-20 people at a time, as happened in Pulwama. So, we are used, I will not say we are inured to, that would be wrong way of putting it, but we know that casualties do occur. And when casualties occur, it only makes us stronger, that we will take badla.
Retributive action.
Yes, we
Yes,
will
that's what
take
I wanted
revenge.
to
Yes,
ask.
we will
Yes.
take revenge for it. And that is the only way that a unit regains its morale, by taking that revenge.
Right. And about the myth.
So that is the reason why you had the people from Santosh Babu's unit involved in the operations which we carried out in Rechanla, Rezangla, this area.
Absolutely, because that is the only way you get your morale back. It's like when you horse riding. When you fall off a horse, you get back on immediately. You don't go and hide somewhere else. So that is precisely the point. Best way to get your morale back is to get involved in operations and do a good job.
Jain Saab is talking about how their troops had to go back down after 48 hours. Remember, Ajit, उस time वो भी चल रहा था कि इनके troops जो हैं, they are 6 feet tall, Chinese soldiers,
So,
meat खाने वाले हैं, हम घास खाने वाले हैं. Do you remember that?
And sir, we wanted to ask you also on this. We had discussed, I and ma'am had discussed. Now, this Galwan happens, sir. The whole world, people see like Australia, Mongolia, every country, whosoever is Chinese neighbor, they don't fight with them. The Chinese create a hawa and they come, they threaten, they say we have got this this missile, that missile. Do you think this fight in Galwan, the clash in Galwan, the way our troops gave them a bloody nose, did this demolish the image of 7 feet tall Chinese soldiers in the minds of our troops as well as internationally?
I think not only of the PLA itself, but I feel it diminished the stature of China as a country in the global eyes. Because after this clash occurred and we showed that it is possible to stand up to China, who tries to bully its smaller neighbors. Once we did that, I think from Canada to Lithuania to Europe to Philippines, everyone actually, got that feeling that yes, if you're fighting for what is correct, if you have a principled stand, it is possible to take a stand even against China. And we don't have to always be cowed down by the might that they try to project.
I think the ASEAN was also looking in wonderment at that stage.
Quite right.
As to how we react because of Chinese aggression in the South China Sea, in all that was happening. So I think there was a lot of focus on the Indian Army at that stage.
Indian Army and India as a country. India as a country showed to the world that it is possible to take on that neighborhood bully. As is the case everywhere, whether it is a school bully or a neighborhood bully, you have to stand up to him sometime or the other.
Right.
We showed it can be done.
So you feel this happened, but it has happened a bit late. We have given them a long rope. We allowed them to, for many years, we allowed them to encroach inch by inch.
It maybe that happened over a period of time. Some things always come to a head sometime or the other. So it came to a head
at that stage
in 2020.
Jain Saab, in your first press conference, I'm again quoting, you had written that the army is rebalancing its deployment and strategy along the western, northern and northeastern borders to deal with any kind of threat, be it from Pakistan or China. Earlier, the focus was on the western front. We now feel that both the western and the northern fronts are equally important, and that's why we are rebalancing. Quite prophetic, I would say, that when you talked about rebalancing, because for a long time one had kept hearing about a two-front war, and that actually almost happened in 2020. So to take from what Ajit was saying, was it something that we did too late? Should it have been done earlier?
No, see, these analysis of likely threats and how they're going to manifest is once again a continuous process. It's not that you suddenly one day do that. Based on various inputs that we keep getting, based on new acquisitions which are made by the enemy, we also get inputs on new strategies that he is adopting. So based on all such things, we keep appreciating the likely threats And against those threats, what remedial measures or countermeasures we should take. And it is in that light that we felt that the threat from our northern borders is increasing vis-a-vis that of our western borders, and therefore we need to rebalance some forces. We have always had plans in place where some troops could go from the western front to the eastern front or vice versa. It is a question of where they should be initially deployed. They be initially deployed more to the west and go to the east? By east I mean east and north as a contingency, or they should be against the northern adversary first and go to the west as a contingency. So that is what is the rebalancing. That rather than being more west oriented, they become now more north oriented.
So that's
but that does not mean that they cannot come back to the west.
Yeah, because that's a continuous threat.
Continuous threat.
It's
And
not.
so we
it's not.
keep evaluating. But suppose tomorrow something changes on the western front, we might revert to what it was earlier.
But you can also be sure that now, see, there's also this thing that we never talk about China as Dushman Mulk. But it has come to a situation where if this continuous engagement with weapons, this continuous injuries which are happening, it is a Dushman Mulk. So if you have Dushman on both northern and northern, western, eastern fronts, they can collaborate and it can become a single front war, like maybe geographically different, but actually one Dushman if they are collaborating like this.
So in the analysis of threat, we will always have to prioritize. And I think that kind of prioritization we do everywhere. In our personal lives also we prioritize. So similarly, we have to prioritize which is the more important threat or which is the more dangerous one. And of course, focus more on that and less on the other.
And now nobody has any doubts that China is the enemy number one.
I think that's been the case not now, but for many years. I think our former defense minister had also said that.
George Fernandez.
More than 2 decades ago, that China is the enemy. So there's nothing new. It is just that we have become more cognizant of that fact and we are more open to talking about it rather than keeping it in the shadows and not mentioning it.
Jain right now, even as Raksha Mantri is speaking in Parliament, before that he was briefed by the service chiefs. Tell us, I'm talking about December 9th attack, which has happened, and he was briefed by the service chiefs. And we've also heard that they had come with drones, not just clubs, but they had come with drones.
To shoot the entire.
To film the entire thing. Maybe not weaponized drones, but maybe these drones were there to see forward how many troops we have, or I don't know. I mean, there could be cameras operated from those drones. You would have briefed similarly the Raksha Mantri. What happens in these kind of briefings? Give us a sense of how this takes place, like when you inform the civilian leadership.
No, obviously, we have to give a very fair and clear picture of what has happened, and we try not to hide any facts. And if something has happened, like in Galwan, we suffered casualties, straight away we said, yes, we have suffered the casualties. We did not try to hide it like the Chinese have done. And they refused to declare. Now they've declared 4. Now they agreed to a 5th one. But the numbers are much higher. So we give a very clear picture. We give an assessment of what has happened and an assessment of what is likely to happen in the future. And in the future, I mean in the short term and in the long term. And based on that assessment, what we need to do. So that is how it generally transpires. And each service gives their own view on that incident. Of course, in an incident like Yangtze, which is more land-based and very, very localized, there probably would not be so much inputs from, say, the Navy. But obviously their inputs will also be taken into consideration.
Okay.
And so you were talking about assessment. So in your assessment, when you gave it to the government post Galwan, what was the assessment of Chinese casualties by the Indian Army, sir?
Well, I've time and again said that I will not like to get into a numbers game. So the number of casualties is not important. What is important is the fact that they suffered casualties. Because all along, over the last 2 decades, not only with India, but with Bhutan, with Nepal, they're also encroaching. In the South China Sea, they've been encroaching.
They have a free pass mostly.
Free pass, and never has anybody challenged them. And they never ever suffered casualties. For them, it was a very low cost, no cost option. Without doing anything and without suffering any casualties, they were gaining whatever the aims were being achieved. This is the first time that they got the jhatka. And that is what has forced them to reassess this way of doing things. So that is what is important. The numbers are not important. Whether it is 1 or 40.
So, sir,
It doesn't matter.
And it's a jhatka which has happened without an international coalition or anything against them. By a
just
single
single-
ek mulk.
how do you feel? You were the army chief. How do you feel when some Bollywood actors try to say hi from Galwan? How do you react to them? That, sir.
No, I think we should just brush it off and not take too much, not give it. More you comment or give credence to it, the more it remains in the limelight. I have always been of the view that such people are free to talk and comment and all. All these comments, the more you ignore them, the sooner they die a natural death, rather than reacting. You react, it remains in the limelight.
Sir,
Just let it pass.
That is one way of looking at it, sir. Yes. But there is also narrative building that happens. And I will go into the Balakot incident. I mean, Balakot by and large was probably an Air Force operation. So, but still, I mean, you would be aware that what had happened was that, we had struck, but Pakistan somehow got the lead over us as far as the narrative is concerned. They took troops, they took diplomats and they took people around and they said, "Kauwe mare hain, ye kiya hai." That there was nothing.
Yes.
We didn't have pictures, we didn't have images. And then the narrative was that hum haar gaye hain. And then people in our own country started believing that narrative, right? Because then it's not just ordinary civilians who were listening in or looking at the social media. There were people from reporters and all who were culling stories from that. So sometimes ignoring doesn't work, right?
No, in this case, it was just one person, one individual. So that's a different matter. But on the larger scale, it is also important to win the information war.
Right.
And that has become very important in these times of interconnectivity and social media. It is not enough to win the war on the ground, as you mentioned. You have to win the perception war also. And for that, I think it's a whole new ball game, and which has to be done at a much higher and at a national level. It is not something which will be done at the ground level, that a battalion commander is saying something. So it will have to be pieced together and that narrative built and aired to show that we have actually won the war on ground. So both these things have become very important now.
And hum pis jate hain as journalists, let me tell you, because decades of this experience which Ajit and I both together, if we would have, is the same thing, that we get information from, and not just this incident but any other incident also. You get the information and then the Fauj wants to run with it. The civilian administration doesn't want to run for it. And I am talking about years ago also.
Yes.
Okay, now the American president is coming. So even if we would have won something on the ground, don't report on it, don't say it. Or we would have lost on the ground. Maybe we've lost a few men on in a terror incident. Our Fauj has lost, but don't run with it because you have a visit or you have an international event which is happening, which India is hosting or whatever. So isko chup karo.
Or like in the recent past, sir, that don't report on this matter because we have the 8th round of talks happening. Don't report on this matter because 9th round of talks is happening.
So, when you're doing this Psy war, it has to be coordinated at the highest level. Because only at the highest level do you know all the other ramifications. Because a statement made at a lower level should not boomerang on you or rebound with say a different country or a different ally. So therefore it has to be coordinated at a higher level, and perhaps then we have to accept that they know more than what we do. And therefore their decision is the correct one. When they
You
say,
mean they in the sense the political establishment or the civilian, whatever?
Yes, not the
The
I
bureaucracy,
won't say the political establishment, the government of the day. It is a government. We are responsible to Parliament,
Right.
not to a particular party and we are responsible. Parliament decides, and
So
that is the government of the day. So government of the day are more seized. They are getting inputs from so many places. They are getting inputs from so many missions abroad. They are getting inputs from the RNAW. They know what is. Maybe there is some trade deal which is being struck, and a statement may jeopardize that deal. So there are so many facets which you and me may not be aware of.
Okay.
Because after all, we are bound in our own domains.
Right.
But there is somebody who knows all
A larger picture.
So
Right.
we have to accept that they know what is best for the country.
Right. When I'm going to go back to Balakot, because, one viewers, which I had told you, was that the narrative Pakistan got ahead of us in that respect. And there was this thing that have we probably not struck a target which was significant, or, what has happened? There was one view which I was told that at that time maybe it was prudent not to, because you're dealing with a country which is a rogue nation, and they have nuclear weapons, and they could just escalate the whole situation. So maybe it was significant to hit the enemy, but not provoke the enemy by encouraging a next action from them. Could that be true?
No, we hit them and they did react. They did come the next day, and that is when we lost one aircraft also,
Yes.
and when Commander Abhinandan was also
Yes.
shot down. So it's not that our action did not provoke a reaction. But once again, we have to see the larger picture. The larger picture is that we have demonstrated our will to strike. Again, whether we struck the number of casualties, the number of terrorists who were killed is not important. The fact is that we have said that if you do something to us, we will do something to you. And that will be proportionate or even more than what you have done to us.
Exactly.
That is the message that is gone across, and which is the important message.
Yeah, the disproportionate is also possible.
Also possible. So
Yeah.
that is the message. As I say, let's not get into the numbers. That is not the larger picture and the larger message that has gone. That is messaging, strategic signaling. That don't try these stunts, because you will suffer more than we do.
So I'm going to get to Pakistan now. Our bug
Ma'am,
there. Or you want to still stay with Galwan?
Ma'am, I want to still stick with this. Sir, you talked about giving jhatka to China in Galwan. That was a big jhatka for them. But this was June. In 2020 August, last week, you gave a bigger jhatka to them in Rechenla, Rezangla also. Please tell us about that, sir. What did we do?
Yes. So actually, when I said that we took countermeasures, this is part of those countermeasures. And as I was saying that it's always the Chinese who have been coming and probing here and there, and we have always been reactive. This is the first time that we showed them that we can also do the same thing to them. Proactive measures, and we can put them on the back foot. And again, that they were taken by surprise. Everybody asks us that you were taken by surprise. Were they not taken by surprise?
And
they were taken by surprise in spite of being face to face. That means we were that much better. That under their nose we could do that. And take an offensive action and go and sit on places, Rezangla, Rechenla, where we fought such bloody battles in 1962.
Yeah.
We were back there.
That humiliation of 1962
So sort of,
in Rezangla.
Yes, and we were right sitting there and looking down on their garrison at Moldo. And they were really shaken up. They never expected. They were always thought we were a defensive force. They never thought we can go on the offensive also. And that is what has now prompted all that infrastructure development that they're doing. Now they're scared of us, that we will come into their territory.
But we have taken, right? In the 60s, we have taken offensive action. 69 was it? Or
No, that was again at the border only.
At the border
At
only.
the border only. But
This
now,
was the first
for
time.
the first time, they are thinking, and rightly so, that they should be worried that we will go in. And not that only they will come, or battle will only be at the border.
retributive
Sir,
offensive.
can you tell us, sir, what actually happened? What all did we do in that? That is the southern bank of Pangong.
No, it is little more than the southern bank. See,
Sir.
they had initially come on the northern bank.
Sir.
Then we also appreciated that they will try and come on the heights of the southern bank, which they did. And then it was a race between the two of us, that who will get to those heights faster. So at some places we reached first, some places they reached first. So it was sort of 50-50. But having appreciated that, we said, come, let us go further south of the Spangur Gap and take these Kailash ranges and these two passes of Rechenla and Rizangla, which they did not expect. They thought we will keep it localized to the north and south bank. But then when we went further south, and as I said, they did not expect that we will take this kind of a offensive action.
And sir, this Rechenla, Rezangla, why were they not occupied at that moment? Are they on our side of LAC
No,
or
the
they?
LAC runs along these passes.
Okay,
And therefore both sides do not occupy them.
okay.
By mutual that agreement that you will remain on your side and we will remain on our side, and LAC itself is not manned.
And we occupied these
unlike
both
the
passes.
LC with Pakistan, where we sit eyeball to eyeball.
And we occupied both these passes.
We occupied both these.
Is there any rethink to that agreement, Jansab?
No, not as of now. I think it has stood us in good stead. These incidents which have happened, as I mentioned, will, I think, reinforce the point that a stable border is conducive to peace, and peace obviously leads to growth and development. So by and by, I think there will be a realization that a stable border and resolving this border question is to our mutual benefit.
Right. For our listeners and viewers, we are running this episode on the week of Vijay Divas. Those who might not be in India, you may not be aware of the significance of the day. 16th December 1971 is observed as Vijay Divas, the day India helped in the liberation of Bangladesh, a decisive war when Pakistani troops surrendered to the Indian army. Jan Sahab, I want to ask you about that 1971 surrender. There's this, when you were chief, when we visited you, Ajit always mentions that there's that painting behind, on that wall where you used to meet, right, Ajit? Where you used to meet guests.
All the foreign chiefs, including the Saudis, Bangladeshis, all the chiefs who came to meet General Naravane in that office, in that lounge, chief's lounge. The picture would come with the surrender ceremony in the backdrop, and every time the Pakistanis would react very